Welcome, dear listener, to a tale woven from the threads of history, a story so vivid you'll feel the chill of a forgotten year creep into your bones. If you love diving into the past, where every sound, scent, and shadow tells a story, hit that like button, subscribe, and share in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Let's step into the year 536 CE, a time when the world seemed to pause, shrouded in a darkness that no one could explain. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine. The air is heavy, thick with a damp chill that seeps through your woolen cloak, clinging to your skin like a whispered warning. You stand on a rocky outcrop, overlooking a village nestled in a valley somewhere in the heart of what we now call Europe. The sky above is not the vibrant blue of a spring morning, but a dull, ashen grey, as if the heavens have been smeared with soot. The sun, that golden orb you've trusted all your life, is a faint, sickly disk, barely piercing the haze. It's not night, yet the world feels suspended in an eerie twilight, where shadows stretch too long, and the wind carries a faint, acrid tang, like the ghost of a distant fire. You pull your cloak tighter, your fingers brushing the coarse weave, and wonder, what has stolen the light? In the village below, life stumbles forward. You hear the rhythmic thunk of an axe splitting wood, each strike echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness. A woman's voice, low and weary, calls to a child, her words muffled by the fog that blankets the valley. The scent of smoke curls upward from chimneys, mingling with the earthy musk of wet soil and decaying leaves. You taste the bitterness of last night's barley broth lingering on your tongue, a meager meal that left your stomach growling. This is 536 CE, a year that history would later deem one of the darkest in human memory, not just for its strange, unending gloom, but for the cascade of suffering it unleashed. You are Edric, a farmer in your late 30s, your hands calloused from years of tilling stubborn soil. Your life is bound to this land, to the cycles of planting and harvest, to the sun that has always risen to warm your fields. But this year, the sun has betrayed you. As you walk toward the village, your boots sink into the mud, each step a cold, squelching reminder of the rains that never seem to stop. The crops, your barley, your rye, are stunted, their stalks pale and brittle, as if drained of life. You pass a neighbor, Eliana, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow as she cradles a basket of shriveled roots. "Edric," she murmurs, her voice barely above a whisper, "the gods have turned their backs on us. What have we done?" You have no answer. The priests in the village, those who once spoke with confidence of divine will, now mutter prayers that sound more like pleas. The air feels heavy with their uncertainty, and you catch the faint scent of incense drifting from the small wooden church, its timbers darkened by the constant damp. You pause, your breath visible in the chill, and listen to the distant lowing of cattle. Fewer now, for many have been slaughtered to stave off hunger. The world feels smaller, tighter, as if it's closing in around you. Historical records, pieced together centuries later, tell us that 536 CE was marked by a catastrophic event. A volcanic eruption, likely in Iceland or the tropics, spewed ash into the atmosphere, cloaking the northern hemisphere in a veil of dust. The Byzantine historian Procopius wrote, "The sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during this whole year." In China, chronicles speak of snow falling in summer, crops failing, and stars vanishing from the sky. In Mesoamerica, tree rings from this period show stunted growth, a silent testament to a world starved of warmth. But for you, Edric, these are not chronicles or tree rings. They are the gnawing ache in your belly, the fear that grips your heart as you wonder how your family will survive the coming winter. You make your way to the village square, where a small crowd has gathered. The cobblestones are slick beneath your feet, and the air carries the sharp, metallic scent of rain-soaked iron from a blacksmith's forge nearby. A traveller, his cloak tattered and his face weathered by wind and hardship, stands atop a wooden crate, his voice rising above the murmurs. "I've seen it beyond the hills," he says, his words sharp like the crack of a whip. "Fields lie barren, rivers choke with ice, and the people speak of a darkness that never lifts. They say it's the end of days. His eyes, wild and searching, meet yours, and you feel a shiver that has nothing to do with the cold. The crowd stirs, their whispers like the rustle of dry leaves. A woman, her shawl slipping from her shoulders, clutches a child to her chest and asks, "Is it true then? Has the world gone mad?" The traveller hesitates, his fingers tightening around the staff he leans on, the wood worn smooth by countless miles. "I know only what I've seen," he says softly, "and what I've seen is a sky that weeps ash and a sun that hides its face." You feel the weight of his words settle over you, heavy as the fog that clings to the village. The crowd disperses slowly, their footsteps muffled, leaving you standing alone in the square, the traveller's words echoing in your mind. You turn toward home, your path winding past a stream where the water runs sluggish, its surface dulled by the ever-present haze. The sound of it lapping against the rocks is faint, almost drowned out by the wind's low moan, a sound that seems to carry voices from far away, voices of fear, of hunger, of despair. You think of your wife, Leofwin, waiting at home, her hands busy with mending nets or kneading dough, her smile a rare light in these dark days. You think of your daughter, Seinberg, only 6, who asks why the sun no longer shines. How do you explain a world that feels broken? As you walk, you pass a grove of oak trees, their branches bare, their bark rough under your hand as you steady yourself against one. The texture is grounding, a reminder of the earth that has sustained you, until now. You recall a story your father told you, of a time when the gods grew angry and plunged the world into shadow. Was this such a time? You shake your head, trying to dispel the thought, but it lingers like the taste of sour ale, bitter and unyielding. In the distance, you hear the faint toll of a bell from the church, its sound muted, as if the fog swallows it whole. You imagine the priest inside, his hands trembling as he lights another candle, its flame flickering weakly against the gloom. The scent of wax and smoke lingers in your memory, a fleeting comfort. You wonder what the priest knows, what secrets he keeps behind his furrowed brow. Does he, too, feel the world unraveling? Historical evidence suggests that the volcanic eruption of 536 CE triggered a global cooling event, dropping temperatures by as much as 2.5 degrees Celsius. Crops failed across Europe, Asia, and beyond, leading to famine, disease, and social upheaval. In the Byzantine Empire, Emperor Justinian's ambitious plans to reunite the Roman world faltered as resources dwindled. In your village, Edric, you don't know of empires or distant lands. You know only the shrinking stores in your cellar, the thinning faces of your neighbors, and the growing fear that this darkness is no mere season, but a harbinger of something worse. You reach your home, a low, thatched cottage, its walls sturdy but cold to the touch. The door creaks as you push it open, the sound sharp in the quiet. Inside, the air is warmer, scented with the faint sweetness of burning wood and the tang of herbs Leofwin has hung to dry. She looks up from the hearth, her eyes catching the firelight, and for a moment you feel a spark of hope. "Edric," she says, her voice soft but steady, "what news from the square?" You hesitate, the traveller's words heavy on your tongue. How do you tell her that the world beyond your village is crumbling too? You sit by the fire, its warmth a fragile shield against the cold that presses in from outside. The flames crackle, their dance casting shadows that flicker like memories of brighter days. You take Leofwin's hand, her skin rough but familiar, and begin to speak. You tell her of the traveller, of the ash in the sky, of the fear that grips the village. She listens, her face still, but her fingers tighten around yours, a silent vow to face this together. Seinberg, curled up on a pallet nearby, stirs in her sleep, her small breaths a reminder of what you're fighting to protect. But as the fire burns low, a new sound reaches your ears, a distant shout, carried on the wind. You rise, your heart quickening, and step outside. The fog has thickened, the air sharp with the scent of frost. In the distance, you see a flicker of torchlight, moving toward the village. Someone is coming. Someone with news, or perhaps something worse. You stand frozen, the cold biting at your skin, and wonder, what does this mean for us? Thank you for stepping into this shadowed world with me. If this tale stirred your imagination, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for the next chapter. What would you do in a world where the sun refused to shine? For Edric, Leofwin, and their village, the darkness is only the beginning. Something is coming, carried on the wind, and it will change everything. Dearest listener, as you settle into the quiet of this moment, perhaps with a warm drink in hand or nestled under a blanket, let's return to the shadowed world of 536 CE. If this tale wraps you in its chill and wonder, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment about what you'd carry with you into such a dark time. Tonight, we follow the torchlight flickering through the fog, a beacon of hope or dread, as the world beyond the village begins to stir. Close your eyes, let the sounds fade, and step back into the cold. The night air bites at your knuckles, raw from a day spent mending fences, as you stand outside your cottage, eyes fixed on the distant glow weaving through the mist. The torchlight sways like a will-o'-the-wisp, its orange flicker cutting through the grey shroud that has cloaked the world for months. You, Edric, feel the weight of the unknown pressing against your chest, your breath shallow, tasting faintly of the smoky warmth from the fire inside. The wind carries a low hum, a murmur of voices, perhaps, or the groan of something heavier, like a cart's wheels grinding against stone. Your heart quickens, and the coarse wool of your tunic scratches against your skin as you shift, straining to hear. Who approaches your village under this sunless sky? Inside, Leofwin's silhouette moves against the firelight, her hands still as she pauses her work, sensing your tension through the open door. The scent of dried thyme and burning oak lingers, a fragile comfort against the damp chill that seeps through the thatch. You hear Seinberg's soft whimper from her pallet, a sound that tugs at you, grounding you in the need to protect. Edric, Leofwin calls, her voice steady but laced with unease. What do you see? You don't answer, not yet, for the torchlight is closer now, and with it comes the unmistakable creak of wood and the dull thud of hooves on sodden earth. A cart, then. Travellers, perhaps, or something else entirely. You step forward, your boots sinking into the mud, the cold seeping through the worn leather to numb your toes. The fog swirls, parting briefly to reveal shapes. 3, maybe 4 figures, moving with purpose toward the village square. The air smells sharp, of wet iron and something sour, like unwashed wool left too long in the rain. You follow, drawn by curiosity and dread, your hand resting on the dagger at your belt, its hilt smooth and familiar under your calloused fingers. The village is stirring now. You hear the soft clatter of shutters opening, the low murmur of voices as others emerge, their shadows blending into the gloom. The church bell tolls once, a hollow note that seems to hang in the air, unanswered. In the square, the travellers halt. There are 3, a man, broad-shouldered and cloaked, his face half hidden by a hood, a woman, her hair braided tightly, her hands gripping the reins of a gaunt horse, and a boy, no older than Seinberg, clutching a bundle to his chest. Their cart is laden with sacks, their edges frayed, and a few crude tools that glint dully in the torchlight. The man steps forward, his boots heavy on the cobblestones, and raises a hand. "We seek shelter," he says, his voice rough, like gravel underfoot. "We come from the east, where the fields are ash and the rivers still. Will you hear us?" The crowd, small but growing, shifts uneasily. You catch Eliana's eye, her face pale, her basket still clutched tightly. The village elder, Wulfric, steps forward, his staff tapping the ground, the sound sharp against the muffled quiet. His beard, streaked with grey, catches the torchlight as he speaks. "Speak, stranger," he says, his tone wary but not unkind. "What news do you bring? And why travel in such times?" The air grows heavier, as if the fog itself waits for the answer. You feel the damp press against your skin, a clammy weight that mirrors the unease in your gut. The man lowers his hood, revealing a face weathered by more than years, eyes sunken, cheeks hollow, as if hunger has carved him from within. "I am Godric," he says, "once a farmer like you. We fled our village when the crops failed again, when the frost came in summer, and the sky refused to clear. The East is dying." His words land like stones, each one sinking into the silence. The woman, his wife, you presume, steps closer, her voice softer but no less urgent. "The people there speak of omens," she says, "of a darkness sent to punish us. We could not stay." You glance at the boy, his eyes wide, his small hands trembling as he clings to his bundle. It moves slightly, and you realize it's not goods but a swaddled infant, its faint cry piercing the quiet like a needle. The sound twists something inside you, a memory of Steinberg's newborn wails, and you wonder how far these people have walked, carrying such fragile hope. The crowd murmurs, some with pity, others with fear. "What if they bring sickness?" a voice hisses, and you recognize the blacksmith, his hands still blackened from the forge. The scent of charred wood clings to him, sharp against the fog's dampness. Godric raises a hand again, his voice steady despite the accusation. "We carry no plague, only hunger and tales. But we've seen others, bands of men, desperate, taking what they can. They move west, toward villages like yours." A chill runs through you, colder than the air, and you imagine those bands, shadowy figures in the fog, their footsteps silent but deadly. The crowd shifts again, the tension palpable, like the taut string of a bow. You feel Leofwin's presence behind you now, her hand brushing your arm, her warmth a fleeting anchor. Historical accounts confirm that 536 CE marked the beginning of a cascade of crises. The volcanic ash cloud, likely from an eruption in Iceland or possibly Ilopango in El Salvador, plunged the northern hemisphere into a prolonged winter. Chronicles from the Byzantine Empire note that the air grew thick with dust, while in China, the annals of the Liang dynasty record yellow dust raining like snow. Famine followed, and with it migration, people fleeing barren lands, seeking refuge in places untouched or less scarred. But no place was truly safe. In your village, Edric, you don't know of volcanoes or distant empires, only the stories these travelers bring, each word a spark that could ignite fear or hope. Wulfric, the elder, leans on his staff, his eyes narrowed. "You ask for shelter," he says, "but what do you offer? Our stores are thin, our fields bare." Godric gestures to the cart, his movements slow, deliberate. "We have seeds," he says, "hardy ones, from lands where the soil still yields, and knowledge of how to plant them. We ask only a roof and a share of what we grow." The woman, whose name you learn is Ethelfled, adds, "I know herbs, remedies for fever and wound. Let us prove our worth." Her voice is like the stream outside your cottage, steady but carrying an undercurrent of desperation. The crowd is divided. Some, like Aliana, nod, their faces softening at the thought of new seeds, new hope. Others, like the blacksmith, scowl, their fear of strangers outweighing their hunger. You feel the pull of both sides. Your own stores are dwindling, the barley sacks in your cellar barely enough for the winter. Yet you see the boy, his small frame shivering, and think of Steinberg. What would you want for her, if you were the ones fleeing? You step forward, your voice surprising you with its firmness. "Let them stay," you say, "but watch them. We cannot turn away those who might help us survive." The words feel heavy, like the mud clinging to your boots, but they earn a nod from Wulfric. The travelers are led to a barn at the edge of the village, its walls sturdy but draughty, the air inside thick with a musty scent of straw and old leather. You help carry their sacks, the coarse burlap rough against your palms, and catch the faint, earthy smell of seeds within. Rye, perhaps, or something unfamiliar. Godric thanks you with a nod, his eyes meeting yours, and you sense a shared weight, a silent understanding of what it means to fight for family in a world gone cold. As you leave the barn, the fog seems to thicken, swallowing the torchlight, and you hear the distant howl of a wolf, its cry sharp and mournful, like a warning. Back home, Leofwin is waiting, her hands dusted with flour from a loaf she's shaping. The dough's yeasty scent a small rebellion against the gloom. "Will they stay?" she asks, her eyes searching yours. You nod, recounting Godric's words, the promise of seeds, the threat of raiders. Her face tightens, but she says nothing, only presses the dough harder, as if willing it to multiply. Steinberg, awake now, clings to her mother's skirt, her small voice asking, "Will the sun come back, Papa?" You kneel, your knees cold against the packed earth floor, and brush a strand of hair from her face. "It will," you say, though the words feel like a lie. The fire crackles, its warmth fleeting, and you wonder if you've made the right choice. As you lie down that night, the straw mattress prickling through your tunic, you hear the wind outside, sharper now, carrying whispers of movement beyond the village. The traveller's arrival has stirred something, a ripple that could grow into a wave. You close your eyes, the darkness behind your lids no different from the world outside, and wonder what these strangers will bring, salvation or something far worse. Thank you for walking this shadowed path with me. If this story chilled your bones or sparked your hope, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for the next chapter. What would you do with strangers at your door in such a desperate time? For Edric and his village, the arrival of Godric and his family is only the beginning. Something stirs beyond the fog, and it's moving closer. Dear listener, as you sink into the calm of this evening, perhaps with the soft glow of a lamp or the hum of a quiet room, let's return to the shadowed world of 536 CE, where every choice feels like a gamble against an unforgiving sky. If this tale draws you into its chill and mystery, hit that like button, subscribe, and share in the comments what you'd fight to protect in such a time. Tonight, we step into the daily struggle of a village clinging to life, where the scent of bread and the bite of cold shape every moment. Close your eyes, feel the earth beneath you, and let's begin. The morning air is sharp, slicing through the thin weave of your tunic as you step outside, the frost crunching beneath your boots like brittle bones. You, Edric, pause at the threshold of your cottage, your breath clouding in the dim light of a sun that barely rises, its glow a faint smear behind the ever-present haze. The village lies quiet, save for the distant clatter of a bucket against a well, the sound ringing out like a solitary bell in the fog. Your hands, rough and cracked from days of labor, ache as you grip the handle of a wooden hoe, its surface worn smooth by years of use. The scent of damp earth rises from the fields, mingling with the faint, sour tang of unwashed wool from your cloak, a reminder of the days since you last felt truly warm. Inside, Leofwin is already at work, her hands kneading dough by the hearth. The fires crackle a low, comforting hum against the silence. The smell of baking bread, weak and coarse from the last of your barley, fills the small space, a fragile promise of sustenance. Steinberg sits nearby, her small fingers tracing patterns in the ash by the fire, her eyes distant as she hums a tune you barely recognize. "Papa," she says, her voice soft as the rustle of leaves, "will we eat today?" The question lands like a stone in your chest, and you force a smile, brushing her hair with a hand that feels too heavy. "We will, little one," you say, though the words taste bitter, like the thin broth you've shared for weeks. You head to the fields, where the earth lies stubborn and unyielding, its surface dusted with frost that glitters faintly in the weak light. The crops, those that survived the endless chill, are sparse, their stalks thin and yellowed, as if the life has been drained from them. You kneel, the cold seeping through your knees, and dig your fingers into the soil, its texture gritty and unforgiving, like sand mixed with despair. You think of Godric's seeds, the ones he brought from the east, now stored in the elder's barn under Wulfric's watchful eye. Could they grow in this cursed soil? The thought lingers, sharp as the wind that tugs at your cloak, carrying the faint howl of a distant wolf. In the village, life is a delicate dance of survival. You pass Eliana, her hands red from scrubbing linens in the icy stream. The waters gurgle a constant murmur beneath her labored breaths. She glances up, her face etched with exhaustion, and offers a nod. "Edric," she says, her voice low, "have you seen the newcomers' work? They're planting already." You follow her gaze to a nearby field, where Godric and Ethelfled bend over the earth, their movements slow but deliberate. The boy, whose name you've learned is Alric, scatters seeds with a careful hand, his small frame shivering in the cold. The sight stirs something in you. Hope, perhaps, or suspicion. Are these strangers your salvation, or a burden you cannot bear? You join them, your hoe striking the soil with a dull thud, each swing a protest against the hunger that gnaws at your belly. Godric looks up, his face streaked with dirt, his eyes bright with a determination that feels foreign in this grey world. "These seeds," he says, his voice rough but steady, "they've grown in worse. They need care, not miracles." He shows you how to space them, his hands moving with a precision that speaks of years in the fields. The seeds are small, hard, and unfamiliar, perhaps a strain of rye or wheat from lands you've never seen. Their earthy scent, sharp and alive, contrasts with the deadness of the soil, and you wonder if they carry the promise of spring, or just another false hope. Ethelfled, nearby, is teaching Eliana to grind herbs, their voices a soft murmur against the wind's low moan. The scent of crushed yarrow and chamomile drifts over, sharp and medicinal, a reminder of the fevers that have begun to spread. "This will ease the cough," Ethelfled says, her hand steady as she presses the leaves into a paste. Eliana watches, her skepticism softening, and you catch the faint clink of a mortar against stone, a sound that feels like progress, however small. The village is learning from these strangers, but the cost of their presence weighs heavy. Every mouth fed is another share of your dwindling stores. Historical records paint a grim picture of 536 CE. The volcanic ash cloud, still choking the skies, slashed crop yields across Europe and Asia, with some regions losing up to 80% of their harvests. In the Byzantine Empire, chroniclers noted bread prices soaring, while in Ireland, the annals of Ulster record a failure of bread that left villages starving. Migration surged as people fled barren lands, but so did disease. Malnutrition weakened bodies, making them prey to infections like dysentery and early forms of plague. In your village, Edric, you see this in the gaunt faces, the coughs that echo through the night, the way the church's prayers grow louder, as if volume could summon the sun. By midday you rest, your back aching, your hands blistered from the hoe. You sit on a stone, its surface cold enough to sting through your trousers, and chew a strip of dried fish, its saltiness sharp on your tongue, a meagre meal that does little to fill you. Godric joins you, offering a water skin, its contents cold and tasting faintly of the leather it's stored in. "Your village is strong," he says, his voice low, "but strength alone won't see you through winter." You meet his gaze, his eyes shadowed but resolute, and ask, "What did you leave behind?" He hesitates, his fingers tightening around the water skin. "A home," he says finally, "and a daughter buried under ash." The words hang between you, heavy as the fog, and you feel the weight of his loss, a mirror to your own fears for Steinberg. The afternoon brings a new task, repairing the barn where Godric's family sleeps. You hammer nails into weathered wood, the clang of iron against iron sharp in the quiet, the scent of pine resin rising from the planks. Leofwin joins you, her hands deft as she weaves straw to patch the roof, her breath visible in the cold. "They work hard," she says, her voice soft, "but the blacksmith speaks against them. He says they'll take what's ours." You nod, your hammer pausing, and feel the village's fragile unity fraying. The blacksmith's forge burns bright, its heat a distant promise, but his words spread like sparks, igniting distrust. As evening falls, the village gathers for a meal, a rare communal act in these lean times. The square smells of boiled roots and thin broth, the steam rising in wisps that blend with the fog. You ladle a portion for Steinberg, her small hands clutching the wooden bowl, its warmth a fleeting comfort against her shivering. The fire in the center crackles, its light casting long shadows that dance like spectres. Wulfric stands, his staff thudding against the ground, and speaks of unity, of sharing the burden. But the blacksmith interrupts, his voice loud, accusing. "Why feed strangers when our own children starve?" he demands, his hands clenched, the scent of soot clinging to him. Godric rises, his face calm but firm. "We'll earn our keep," he says, "or we'll leave." The tension is a blade, sharp and unspoken, and you feel Leofwin's hand tighten on yours. That night, as you lie on your straw mattress, the prick of it sharp against your back, you hear the wind again, fiercer now, rattling the shutters. The fire has died to embers, its faint warmth no match for the cold that creeps through the walls. You think of Godric's seeds, of the blacksmith's anger, of the coughs that grow louder in the village. And then a new sound, a low, rhythmic thud like footsteps, coming from the hills beyond. You sit up, your heart pounding, the air thick with the scent of frost and fear. Someone, or something, is out there, moving closer. Thank you for sharing this cold, fragile moment with me. If this story stirred your heart or chilled your bones, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for the next chapter. Would you trust strangers in a starving village, or guard what little you have? For Edric, the choice is tearing his world apart, and something, or someone, is drawing near in the dark. Gentle listener, as the shadows of your room lengthen and the world outside quiets to a hush, let's slip once more into the veiled year of 536 CE, where every encounter carries the weight of worlds colliding. If this narrative pulls you deeper into its misty embrace, give it a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what ancient custom you'd share in such a time. This evening, we explore the threads of culture woven into survival, where strangers become mirrors of forgotten ways. Relax, let your thoughts drift, and join the circle. A faint melody drifts through the fog-shrouded village, its notes rising and falling like the breath of the wind, carrying a rhythm unfamiliar yet strangely soothing to your ears. You, Edric, stand by the edge of the square, the chill of the evening seeping into your bones through the worn soles of your boots, as the sound draws you closer. The air tastes metallic, laced with the crisp bite of impending frost, and the ground beneath you is uneven, pocked with frozen puddles that crackle softly underfoot. The melody comes from Ethelfled, seated by a small fire, her fingers plucking at a simple lute strung with gut, its wooden body scarred from travels. The notes weave a tale of distant hills and forgotten rivers, a song from the east that speaks of loss and longing, its cadence slow and haunting, like the distant call of a bird lost in the haze. You watch as villagers gather, their faces illuminated by the fire's flickering glow, shadows playing across cheeks hollowed by hunger. The scent of burning pine mingles with something new, spices, sharp and exotic, wafting from a pot simmering over the flames. Godric stirs it with a wooden spoon, his movements deliberate, releasing bursts of warmth that cut through the damp cold. "This is how we remember home," Ethelfled says, her voice blending with the lute's final chord, soft yet resonant, like the hum of bees in a summer long gone. She sets the instrument aside, its strings vibrating faintly, and invites the circle to listen. "In our lands, we sing to the stars, even when they hide." Leofwin, standing beside you, squeezes your hand, her palm rough from days of weaving, yet warm with curiosity. Steinberg clings to her skirt, her eyes wide, the fire's light dancing in them like captured embers. The village has changed since the traveller's arrival, subtly at first, in the way conversations linger longer, or how tools are shared with new techniques. But tonight, under this perpetual twilight, the differences bloom into something tangible, a fusion born of necessity. You feel the pull of it, a mix of wariness and wonder, as the cold wind tugs at your cloak, its fabric heavy with the day's moisture. Godric ladles the stew into wooden bowls, the steam rising in curls that carry the pungent aroma of cumin and coriander, spices traded from merchants in the East, now rationed like gold. You take a bowl, its warmth seeping through the carved wood to thaw your fingers, and sip cautiously. The taste explodes on your tongue. Savory broth thickened with roots, laced with a heat that spreads like fire through your veins, contrasting the bland barley porridges you've known all your life. It's earthy, with a hint of sweetness from dried fruits, and a sharpness that lingers, awakening senses dulled by monotony. This is hare stewed with what we call traveller's fire, Godric explains, his voice low and gravelly, as if sharing a secret. It warms the blood when the sun forgets us. Eliana, seated across the fire, her shawl draped loosely over her shoulders, its wool soft and frayed against her skin, tastes it and nods. Our ways are simpler, she says, but this brings life to the bones. She shares a story then, her words flowing like the stream nearby, gurgling softly in the background. In your village, meals are rituals of gratitude, with prayers whispered over bread, the crust crackling under teeth, its flavor plain but grounding. But now, with these newcomers, customs entwine. Ethelfald's song follows Eliana's tale, and the blacksmith, grudgingly at first, hums along, his deep voice adding a rumble like thunder echoing in the distance. You sit on a log, its bark rough and splintered under your palms, and listen as perspectives shift. From your view, the world has always been this valley, its hills cloaked in mist, its people bound by blood and soil. But Godric speaks of eastern plains, where horses roam free, their hooves thundering like distant storms, and markets buzz with voices in tongues that twist like vines. We wear amulets, he says, pulling a small stone pendant from his neck, its surface smooth and cool to the touch as he passes it to you. Carved with symbols of protection, it feels heavy with meaning, a talisman against the dark skies that plague all lands now. You trace its edges, the stone warmed by his body heat, and wonder at the beliefs it carries, gods of wind and fire, different from your own deities of earth and harvest. Ethelfled demonstrates a weaving technique, her fingers nimble on a loom borrowed from Leofwin, the threads whispering as they interlace. The fabric emerges patterned, with swirls that mimic river currents, soft and resilient against the cold. In our homes we weave stories into cloth, she says, her voice a gentle cadence, to wrap our children in memories. Leofwin watches, then tries it herself, her hands adapting, the looms creak a rhythmic accompaniment to their shared laughter, light, like the tinkling of icicles melting. Seinberg reaches out, her tiny fingers brushing the threads, feeling the texture shift from coarse wool to something finer, infused with eastern dyes that hint at faded reds and blues, colors muted by the haze but vivid in memory. The fire pops, sending sparks upward into the fog, where they vanish like stars swallowed by the veil. You hear the elder, Wulfric, join the conversation, his staff tapping the ground softly, a punctuation to his words. Our songs are of battles past, he says, his tone reflective, heroes who faced giants in the mist. He begins a chant, his voice deep and steady, evoking the clash of shields, imagined sounds of metal ringing, echoes of a heritage tied to this land. Godric listens, then counters with a ballad of nomads crossing rivers. The waters roar in his lyrics, the splash and churn vivid enough to make you feel the spray on your skin. The blend creates harmony, but not without tension. The blacksmith grumbles about foreign noise, his hammer resting nearby, its iron head cold and unyielding. Historical whispers from this era reveal a world in flux. The volcanic winter of 536 CE forced migrations across continents, blending cultures in unexpected ways. In the Byzantine Empire, refugees from the north brought Slavic customs, altering cuisine with fermented grains that added tangy depths to meals, their tastes sour and preserving. In Europe, Germanic tribes mingled with Roman remnants, exchanging clothing styles, fur-lined cloaks for woolen tunics, textures rough yet insulating. Chronicles like those of Cassiodorus describe barbarian influences seeping into daily life, with songs and stories shared around fires to combat the despair of endless cold. In your village, Edric, these encounters are intimate, a spice that transforms a stew, a melody that lingers in dreams, bridging divides born of desperation. As the night deepens, the air grows colder, nipping at exposed skin like tiny teeth, and you notice Alric, the boy, teaching Seinberg a game from his homeland. Stones tossed in patterns, their clatter sharp against the quiet, the smooth pebbles cool in her hands. She giggles, a sound rare these days, like sunlight breaking through clouds, and you feel a pang of gratitude mixed with unease. What if these customs erode your own? Leofwin senses it, leaning against you, her shoulder warm, and whispers, "They bring pieces of the world we've never seen. Perhaps that's how we endure." Her words hang, flavored by the stew's lingering spice on your breath. But harmony frays at the edges. The blacksmith rises, his boots thudding heavily, and challenges Godric. "Your ways are fine for wanderers," he says, his voice rough as grinding stones. "But here we honor our ancestors with silence, not these noisy tales." Godric meets his gaze, the fire reflecting in his eyes, and replies calmly, "Silence won't fill bellies or warm hearts. Our stories remind us we're not alone." The exchange crackles with tension, like the fire's embers, and the circle falls quiet, the wind's moan filling the void, carrying scents of frost and pine. You intervene, your voice steady, feeling the weight of mediation like a heavy cloak. "We learn from each other," you say, "or we perish alone." The words ease the moment, but the undercurrent remains, a blend of enrichment and conflict, where new tastes and sounds both heal and divide. As the gathering disperses, footsteps muffled in the fog, you walk home, the lute's melody echoing in your mind, a thread connecting distant lands to your own. Lying in bed, the straw prickling your back, the cottage filled with a faint aroma of spices clinging to your clothes, you hear a new disturbance, a rustle in the night, whispers from the barn where the travelers sleep. Something stirs, a secret perhaps, or a sign of deeper troubles brewing amid these cultural tides. Thank you for weaving through these cultural threads with me. If this story sparked your senses or stirred your thoughts, like it, comment below with a custom you'd blend in, and subscribe for more. How far would you go to embrace the unknown? For Edric, these encounters are reshaping his world, but whispers in the dark hint at shadows yet to come. Dear listener, as you nestle into the stillness of this night, perhaps with the faint hum of the world fading around you, let's plunge back into the shrouded year of 536 CE, where survival teeters on the edge of a blade. If this tale grips your heart or chills your spine, hit that like button, subscribe, and share in the comments what you'd fear most in such a shadowed time. Tonight, we face the darker currents of human struggle, where hunger and fear cast long shadows over a fragile village. Settle in, feel the cold creep closer, and let's begin. The night is a heavy cloak, its damp weight pressing against your skin as you stand outside the barn, the air thick with the scent of wet straw and the faint musk of livestock. You, Edric, grip a pitchfork, its wooden handle rough and splintered under your palms, the iron prongs glinting faintly in the torchlight. The whispers you heard earlier, low, urgent murmurs from within the barn, have drawn you here, your boots sinking into the muddy earth with a soft squelch. The fog swirls, dense and unyielding, muffling the distant hoot of an owl, its cry sharp yet ghostly, like a warning swallowed by the dark. Your breath catches, tasting of frost and the lingering spice of last night's stew, as you strain to hear what secrets Godric and his family might be hiding. The barn door creaks, a low groan that sets your nerves alight, and you step closer, the cold biting at your knuckles. Inside, the air is warmer, heavy with the earthy tang of hay and the sour note of unwashed bodies. Godric kneels by a small pile of sacks, his hands sorting through their contents, seeds, tools, and something else, glinting faintly in the dim light of a single candle. Ethelfled sits nearby, her fingers trembling as she wraps a cloth around Alric's foot, his small face pale, his lips pressed tight against pain. The infant, swaddled in her arms, lets out a weak cry, a sound that pierces you like a needle, stirring memories of Steinberg's frail early days. "What's this?" you ask, your voice low but firm, the pitchfork a steady weight in your hands. Godric looks up, his eyes catching the candle's flicker, shadowed with exhaustion and something deeper, guilt, perhaps, or fear. "Edric," he says, his voice rough as gravel, "we meant no harm. These are ours, saved from our home." He lifts a small bronze amulet, its surface etched with unfamiliar runes, and a handful of dried herbs, their sharp, medicinal scent cutting through the barn's mustiness. But it's the glint of metal, a small dagger, its blade nicked but sharp, that draws your eye. "For protection," Ethelfled adds quickly, her voice steady but strained, like a taut bowstring. "The roads are not safe." You feel the village's fragile trust fraying, like the worn threads of your cloak brushing against your neck. The blacksmith's warnings echo in your mind, strangers bringing trouble, taking more than they give. You think of Leofwin, asleep in your cottage, her hands still dusted with flour from a loaf that barely feeds 3. You think of Steinberg, her small frame curled under a thin blanket, her dreams haunted by questions about the sun. "Why keep this hidden?" you ask, your voice carrying the weight of the village's hunger, the cold that gnaws at every home. Godric hesitates, his fingers tightening around the amulet. "Because trust is harder to come by than bread," he says, his words landing like stones in the quiet. The night deepens, and you lead Godric to Wulfric's home, the elder's house a sturdy structure of timber and thatch, its walls cold to the touch as you knock. The air smells of wood smoke and damp earth, and the faint clink of a wind chime, carved bones strung on sinew, adds a mournful note to the silence. Wulfric listens to your account, his staff tapping softly, his eyes narrowed in the firelight that casts long shadows across his weathered face. "A dagger is no crime," he says, his voice slow, deliberate, "but secrets breed fear. Show us what you carry, Godric, or leave by dawn." The ultimatum hangs, heavy as the fog outside, and you feel the tension coil tighter, a snake ready to strike. Historical records paint a brutal picture of 536 CE's aftermath. The volcanic winter, now in its second year, deepened famines across Europe, with chronicles like those of Gregory of Tours noting a great hunger that drove people to eat roots, leaves, and even clay. Desperation bred lawlessness. Bands of raiders, displaced by failed harvests, roamed the countryside, their footsteps silent but deadly, as described in Irish annals that speak of men turned wolves in their hunger. Disease followed, with dysentery and early plague strains thriving in weakened bodies. In your village, Edric, you see this in the coughs that rattle through homes, the way neighbors hoard what little they have, their eyes sharp with suspicion. By morning, the village gathers in the square, the cobblestones slick with frost, the air sharp with the scent of burning oak from a communal fire. Godric and Ethelfled stand before the crowd, their possessions laid out. Seeds, herbs, the dagger, and a small pouch of coins, their surfaces worn but gleaming faintly. The blacksmith, his hands blackened from the forge, points at the dagger, his voice booming like a hammer's strike. "Weapons like this belong to raiders," he accuses, his breath visible in the cold. Eliana, her shawl pulled tight, counters softly. "They've shared their knowledge. Let them prove their intent." The crowd murmurs, their voices a low hum like distant bees, and you feel the village splitting, torn between fear and need. You step forward, your boots heavy on the stones, and speak, your voice steady despite the weight in your chest. "They've planted seeds, taught us remedies. If they meant harm, would they stay to work?" Your words draw nods from some, glares from others, and you feel Leofwin's presence behind you, her hand brushing your arm, her warmth a quiet anchor. Godric kneels, offering the dagger to Wulfric. "Take it," he says, "but let us stay. We've lost too much to lose this, too." The elder accepts the blade, its weight heavy in his hand, and declares, "They stay, but under watch." Trust is earned. The day unfolds in a haze of labor. You work the fields, the soil cold and unyielding, each strike of your hoe a dull thud that echoes your doubts. The scent of turned earth mixes with the faint, acrid tang of frost, and your muscles ache, the cold settling into your bones like an unwelcome guest. Godric joins you, his hand steady as he plants, but his silence speaks of the shadow cast by last night's confrontation. Ethelfled tends to a sick child in Aeliana's home, her herbs filling the air with a sharp, green scent that promises healing but cannot cure fear. Alric, his foot bandaged, helps Steinberg gather kindling, their laughter a fleeting spark against the gloom, the sticks snapping under their small hands. As evening falls, the village feels taut, like a bowstring stretched to breaking. You sit by your hearth, the fire's crackle a low comfort, its warmth barely reaching your toes. Leofwin stirs a pot of broth, its thin aroma a reminder of dwindling stores, and speaks softly. They're like us, Edric, afraid, fighting to live. But what if the blacksmith is right? Her words linger, flavored by the broth's faint saltiness, and you have no answer. Outside, the fog thickens, the air heavy with the scent of frost and something else, a faint metallic tang like blood on the wind. Then, a shout pierces the night, sharp and urgent, from the village's edge. You leap to your feet, the straw mattress rustling, and grab your pitchfork, its weight familiar but heavy with purpose. Leofwin's eyes meet yours, wide with fear, and Steinberg wakes, her small voice trembling. "Papa, what's coming?" You don't know, but as you step into the cold, the distant glow of torches moves closer, their light cutting through the fog like knives. Voices follow, harsh, unfamiliar, carrying the weight of menace. Thank you for braving these shadowed moments with me. If this story stirred your fears or sparked your courage, like it, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more. Would you trust a stranger's blade or turn them away? For Edric, the village teeters on the edge, and something dangerous approaches through the fog. Dear listener, as the quiet of your evening wraps around you like a soft blanket, perhaps with a faint flicker of a candle nearby, let's return to the shrouded world of 536 CE, where survival hinges on fragile bonds. If this tale pulls you into its misty depths, hit that like button, subscribe, and share in the comments what you'd sacrifice to hold a community together. Tonight, we gather in the heart of a village tested by fear, where torchlight and whispered hopes weave a delicate thread of unity. Breathe deeply, feel the chill settle, and let's step forward. The night air is sharp as a blade, cutting through the thin weave of your cloak as you rush toward the village square, the pitchfork in your hand heavy with purpose. You, Edric, feel the cold earth beneath your boots, each step a muffled crunch against frost-hardened ground, the sound swallowed by the fog that cloaks the world in grey. The torches at the village's edge burn closer now, their orange glow slicing through the haze, accompanied by the low rumble of voices, gruff, unfamiliar, and edged with menace. Your breath clouds before you, tasting faintly of the thin broth from supper, its warmth long faded. The scent of damp wool and distant smoke fills your lungs, and your heart pounds, a steady drumbeat echoing the shouts that pierce the night. In the square, the village has gathered, a huddled mass of shadows under the weak light of a communal fire. The flames crackle, spitting sparks that vanish into the fog, their heat a fleeting shield against the cold that bites at your fingertips. Leofwin stands close, her hand gripping Steinberg's, her face pale but resolute, the faint scent of flower clinging to her from the day's work. Wulfric, the elder, leans on his staff, its tap against the cobblestones a steady rhythm, his eyes scanning the approaching lights. Godric and Ethelfled are there, too, their faces taut, Alric clutching his mother's skirt, the infant in her arms silent but wide-eyed. The air hums with tension, thick as the fog, and you feel the weight of every choice, trust, suspicion, survival, pressing down like the sky itself. The torches reveal a group of 6 men, their figures rough-hewn, cloaks tattered and stained with mud. Their leader, a broad man with a scarred face, steps forward, his boots thudding heavily, the sound sharp against the quiet. A sword hangs at his belt, its hilt worn but gleaming faintly, and the metallic tang of rust and sweat clings to him. "We seek food and shelter," he says, his voice like the grind of millstones, "and we'll take it if it's not given." The threat lands like a blow, and the crowd shifts, murmurs rising like the rustle of dry leaves. You feel the pitchfork's weight, its prongs cold and unyielding, and wonder if words can hold back steel. Wulfric raises a hand, his voice calm but firm, like the deep toll of the church bell. "We've little to spare," he says, "but share we will if you come in peace." The leader's eyes narrow, scanning the crowd, lingering on Godric's weathered face and Ethelfald's steady gaze. "Peace depends on your generosity," he replies, a smirk twisting his scar. You catch Godric's glance, his hand twitching as if reaching for the dagger he surrendered, and you sense a shared fear. Raiders like these are the wolves of the chronicles, men turned desperate by hunger, as the annals of Ulster noted in tales of bands who took by force in this darkened year. You step forward, your voice steady despite the chill creeping up your spine. "We're all hungry," you say, "but we've seeds to plant, skills to share. Join us, or move on." The words feel bold, yet fragile, like the thin ice on the stream, its surface glinting faintly nearby, its soft gurgle a quiet undercurrent. The leader laughs, a harsh bark that cuts through the fog, but he nods, gesturing to his men. "We'll stay the night," he says, "and see what your village offers." The crowd parts, uneasy, as the newcomers are led to the barn, their footsteps heavy, the air thick with the scent of their unwashed bodies and the faint, acrid bite of fear. Historical accounts of 536 CE speak of communities tested by scarcity. The volcanic winter, stretching into its second year, drove people to cluster in villages, seeking safety in numbers. In Europe, Germanic tribes fortified settlements, their wooden palisades rough but sturdy, as described by chroniclers like Jordan's, who noted men banding together against the dark. Yet, these gatherings bred conflict. Newcomers brought skills but also suspicion, and raids grew common as hunger eroded trust. In your village, Edric, you feel this tension in the quick glances, the whispered doubts, the way hands linger near tools that could become weapons. The night settles into an uneasy rhythm. You help set up a meal in the square, the fire's warmth a faint comfort against the cold that seeps through your tunic. Leofwin and Aeliana serve broth, its thin, earthy aroma mingling with the smoky tang of burning oak. The newcomers eat greedily, their bowls scraped clean, the sound of wooden spoons against would a sharp counterpoint to the fire's crackle. Godric shares his knowledge of trapping, describing snares for hares, his hands miming the loop of rope, its texture imagined in the air. The leader, whose name you learn is Brant, listens, his eyes sharp, and offers a tale of his own, a method for smoking fish, the process evoking the rich, salty scent of preservation, a skill your village lacks. Ethelfled sings again, her lute's notes softer now, a lullaby that soothes Steinberg and Aulric, their small forms curled near the fire, the straw beneath them rustling faintly. The melody weaves a fragile peace, but Brant's men are restless, their laughter loud, their hands brushing too close to their blades. You notice the blacksmith watching, his forge-darkened hands clenched, his suspicion a palpable weight. "They'll take more than we give," he mutters to you, his breath hot with the scent of soot. You nod, torn between his warning and the hope that sharing might bind you all. By dawn, the village feels changed, its unity a patchwork stitched with fragile threads. You work alongside Godric in the fields, the soil cold and unyielding, the faint scent of frost and earth rising with each strike of your hoe. Brant's men linger, their presence heavy, like the fog that refuses to lift. They help repair a fence, their hammers ringing out, the sound sharp and jarring, but their eyes scan the village, noting every barn, every store. You feel Leofwin's gaze from the cottage, her hands busy with weaving, the looms creak a steady rhythm, her worry a silent pulse between you. As evening approaches, the air grows colder, the fog thicker, carrying the distant howl of a wolf, its cry a mournful echo of the tension within. You gather with Wulfric and the others to decide the newcomer's fate. Stay, contribute, or leave. Voices clash, Aeliana's soft plea for unity drowned by the blacksmith's growl of distrust. Godric speaks, his voice steady. We've all lost homes. Let them prove themselves, as we have. But Brant's smirk lingers in your mind, his hand resting too easily on his sword. Then, as the fire burns low, its embers glowing like fading stars, a cry splits the night. Not a wolf, but human, from the barn where Brant's men sleep. You rise, the cold earth hard under your boots, the pitchfork in your hand a familiar weight. The village holds its breath, the fog swallowing sound, as torchlight flickers once more, revealing shapes moving in the dark. Too many, too fast. Thank you for standing in this fragile circle with me. If this story stirred your heart or quickened your pulse, like it, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more. Would you risk unity with strangers, or guard your own? For Edric, the village's fragile bonds are fraying, and the night hides a threat that could unravel everything. Beloved listener, as you ease into the hush of this evening, perhaps with the soft rustle of a blanket or the distant murmur of the world fading, let's slip back into the shadowed year of 536 CE, where every decision carries the weight of survival. If this tale weaves its chill and hope into your heart, give it a like, subscribe, and share in the comments what choice you'd make in a world on the brink. Tonight, we stand at the crossroads of a village's legacy, where past promises and present fears collide. Let your breath slow, feel the flicker of torchlight, and step into the mist. The night is a living thing, its breath cold and heavy, wrapping around you like a damp shroud as you grip your pitchfork, its wooden handle slick with frost under your calloused palms. You, Edric, stand frozen in the village square, the cry from the barn still ringing in your ears, a sharp human wail that cuts through the fog like a blade. The air tastes of ice and ash, the faint tang of last night's broth lingering on your tongue, now soured by dread. The torches held by Wulfric and the others cast jagged shadows across the cobblestones, their light wavering, as if afraid to pierce the haze. The scent of burning pine rises from the dying communal fire, its crackle drowned by the rapid thud of footsteps, too many, too hurried, approaching from the barn where Brant and his men sleep. You move forward, your boots crunching against the frozen ground, each step a pulse of resolve and fear. Leofwin is beside you, her hand brushing yours, her fingers cold but steady, the faint scent of flower and herbs clinging to her from hours spent preparing what little food remains. Seinberg huddles behind her, her small breaths visible in the chill, her eyes wide with questions you cannot answer. The village gathers, a tense circle of faces lit by torchlight. Aeliana, her shawl pulled tight, its wool frayed against her shoulders. Godric, his jaw set, his hands empty but restless. Ethelfled, clutching Alric and the infant, her lute silent now, its strings still in the dark. The blacksmith's hammer rests nearby, its iron head gleaming coldly, a silent threat. The barn door swings open, its creak a low moan that sets your teeth on edge. Brant emerges, his scarred face taut, his sword drawn, the blade catching the torchlight with a dull glint. Behind him, his men drag a figure, a boy, no older than Alric, his face bloodied, his hands bound with rough cord that bites into his wrists. The crowd gasps, the sound like a gust of wind through bare branches, and you feel the village's fragile unity splinter. Found him creeping near our cart, Brant growls, his voice rough as the grind of stone, stealing what little we have. The boy, trembling, his tunic torn, meets your eyes, and you recognize him. Oswin, the miller's son, barely 12, his thin frame shivering in the cold. Wulfric steps forward, his staff striking the ground with a sharp thud, the sound a call to order. "Speak, Oswin," he says, his voice steady but heavy, like the toll of the church bell muffled by fog. The boy's voice quavers, his words stumbling like pebbles in a stream. "I wasn't stealing," he says. "I only wanted to see. to know what they brought. Everyone's hungry. His eyes dart to Brant, then to you, pleading. The air grows heavier, thick with the scent of frost and the metallic tang of blood from Oswin's split lip. You feel Leofwin's grip tighten, her warmth a faint anchor against the rising tide of accusations. Brant's men mutter, their hands on their weapons, the clink of metal sharp in the quiet. The blacksmith steps forward, his voice booming, his breath hot with the scent of soot. "This is what comes of trusting strangers," he says, pointing at Godric. "They bring thieves and trouble." Godric's face hardens, but Ethelfled speaks, her voice soft yet piercing, like the lute's highest note. "We've shared all we have," she says, "and this boy's hunger is no one's fault but the sky's." Her words hang, flavored by the faint aroma of the herbs she's used to treat the village's sick, a reminder of her contributions, and the cost of division. You feel the weight of history pressing down, the echoes of choices made long before this night. Chronicles of 536 CE, pieced together centuries later, describe a world unraveling under the volcanic winter's grip. In the Byzantine Empire, Procopius wrote of cities torn by mistrust, where hunger turned neighbors into enemies. In Ireland, the annals of Ulster noted men who fought over scraps, forgetting kinship. Here, in your village, Edric, you see this in Oswin's trembling form, in Brant's drawn sword, in the way Aeliana's hands twist her shawl, her knuckles white. Every decision, to trust, to accuse, to share, shapes the legacy you'll leave, a story carved in cold earth and fading firelight. You raise your voice, the words rough but clear, cutting through the murmurs. "Enough," you say, stepping between Brant and Oswin. "Hunger makes thieves of us all, but we're still a village. Let the boy go, and let us talk." Brant hesitates, his sword lowering slightly, the torchlight glinting off its edge. Wulfric nods, his staff tapping again, and the boy is unbound, his wrists raw, the cord's texture rough against his skin as it falls away. Oswin stumbles to his mother, her embrace fierce, the scent of milled grain clinging to her like a memory of better days. The night becomes a council, the village gathered around the fire, its embers glowing faintly, casting warmth that barely reaches your chilled fingers. You sit on a stone, its surface hard and cold, the texture grounding you as voices rise and fall. Wulfric speaks of unity, of the ancestors who survived floods and wars by holding fast together. Godric offers a plan, pooling resources, rationing food, and guarding the village against further raids. Brant, his sword sheathed but his hand never far from it, agrees to stay only if his men are fed. The blacksmith grumbles, but Aeliana's quiet plea, "We've all lost something, let's not lose each other," softens the edges of dissent. You contribute, your voice steady, the pitchfork resting beside you, its prongs glinting like a promise. "We've seeds to plant, hands to work, and knowledge to share," you say, glancing at Godric and Ethelfled. "If we fight among ourselves, the winter wins." The words feel heavy, like the frost settling on your cloak, but they draw nods, even from the blacksmith. The council ends with a fragile pact. Brant's men will help fortify the village, their swords a defense against raiders, while Godric's seeds and Ethelfald's remedies become shared wealth. But trust remains thin, like the ice on the stream, ready to crack under pressure. As dawn breaks, the sky is no brighter, still cloaked in the ashen haze that has stolen the sun. You work with Godric to build a palisade, hammering stakes into the frozen ground, the thud of wood against earth a steady rhythm, the scent of pine resin sharp in the air. Leofwin and Ethelfled tend to Oswin, their hands gentle as they apply salve to his wounds, its sharp green scent a faint hope against infection. Seinberg and Alric play nearby, their laughter a soft chime, the sound of stones clattering in their game a reminder of innocence amid despair. But as the day fades, the fog thickens, carrying a new sound, a low, rhythmic thud, not footsteps but something heavier, like the roll of a distant drum. You pause, your hammer still, the cold seeping into your bones, and look to the hills. Torchlight flickers there, too many to count, moving steadily closer. Brant's men tense, their hands on their swords, while Godric's eyes meet yours, a silent question. Have we built enough to withstand what's coming? Thank you for standing at this crossroads with me. If this story stirred your soul or quickened your heart, like it, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more. Would you bind a fractured village or let it break? For Edric, the pact holds for now, but the horizon hides a threat that could shatter everything. Dear listener, as you sink into the gentle embrace of this night, perhaps with the soft glow of starlight or the hum of a world at rest, let's step one last time into the shadowed year of 536 CE, where the past and present weave a final thread. If this tale has carried you through its chill and hope, give it a like, subscribe, and share in the comments what legacy you'd leave in such a time. Tonight, we close this story, tracing the echoes of a village's struggle into the world we know today. Let your heart settle, feel the warmth of memory, and join us for the end. The dawn is no brighter than the night, its light a faint, grey smear through the ever-present fog, but you, Edric, feel a shift in the air, a subtle warmth, like a whisper of spring stirring beneath the frost. You stand at the village's edge, your boots crunching on the frozen earth, the cold seeping through the worn leather to bite at your toes. The palisade you helped build looms behind you, its wooden stakes rough and splintered under your hand as you steady yourself, the scent of pine resin sharp in the morning chill. The distant thudding from the hills, heard last night, has grown louder, a rhythmic pulse like the heartbeat of something vast and approaching. Your breath clouds before you, tasting faintly of the thin porridge-ly off-wind prepared at dawn, its warmth a fleeting comfort against the gnawing hunger in your belly. The village is awake, gathered in a tents not near the square, their faces lit by the flickering glow of torches. The air carries the mingled scents of burning oak, damp wool, and the faint, metallic tang of fear. Leofwin stands beside you, her hand resting on Steinberg's shoulder, her fingers tracing the coarse weave of her daughter's cloak, a gesture of quiet strength. Godric and Ethelfled are there, their faces etched with resolve, Alric clutching his mother's hand, the infant in her arms stirring with a soft whimper that cuts through the silence. Brant and his men stand apart, their swords drawn, the blades glinting coldly, their breath heavy with the scent of sweat and iron. The blacksmith, his hammer resting nearby, watches with narrowed eyes, his suspicion a heavy weight in the air. The thudding grows clearer, a low, rolling rhythm, like the tread of many feet or the creak of heavy carts. You grip your pitchfork, its handle worn smooth by your calloused palms, and feel the village holding its breath, the fog swallowing sound until the shapes emerge. A caravan, not raiders but travellers, dozens strong, their figures blurred by the haze. Wagons groan under the weight of sacks and tools, pulled by gaunt oxen whose hooves churn the mud with a wet squelch. Their leader, a woman with grey-streaked hair and a staff carved with intricate patterns, steps forward, her cloak heavy with the scent of herbs and dust from distant roads. "We seek refuge," she says, her voice steady, like the deep hum of a river, "and bring what we can to share." The crowd stirs, murmurs rising like the rustle of leaves, and you feel the weight of the moment, a chance to grow or break. Wulfric, his staff tapping the ground, speaks first. "We've little," he says, "but we've learned to share with those who work beside us." His eyes flicker to Godric, then Brant, a silent acknowledgment of the fragile pact that holds the village together. The woman, who calls herself Hilda, nods, gesturing to her caravan. "We have grain, preserved in wax, and healers skilled in the old ways," she says, her words carrying the faint aroma of dried lavender from a pouch at her belt. "Let us join you, and we'll face this winter as one. The decision is not easy." The blacksmith's voice rises, sharp as his hammers strike, warning of stretched resources, of trust too freely given. But Aeliana counters, her voice soft, like the crackle of the fire nearby. "We've survived by opening our doors, not closing them. You think of Godric's seeds, now sprouting faintly in the fields, their green tips a fragile promise against the frost. You think of Ethelfald's songs, their melodies woven into your own, and the stew that warmed your bones with unfamiliar spices. You step forward, your voice rough but clear. We've grown stronger together, you say, and we'll need all hands to survive what's coming. The crowd nods, some reluctantly, and the pact expands, a tapestry stitched with new threads. Historical records of 536 CE, pieced together from chronicles like those of Procopius and the Chinese annals, tell of a world reshaped by crisis. The volcanic winter, stretching into its second year, forced communities to adapt or perish. In Europe, villages like yours became melting pots, blending Germanic, Roman, and migratory traditions. New crops like hardy rye, new songs, new ways of binding wounds. In Asia, the Liang dynasty's records note the sharing of preserved foods, a practice that saved thousands. These echoes linger today, in the grains we eat, the stories we tell, the resilience born of shared struggle. In your village, Edric, you see this in the new faces around the fire, the shared labor, the hope that grows like a seedling in barren soil. The day unfolds in a flurry of activity. You help unload Hilda's wagons, the sacks heavy with grain, their coarse burlap rough against your hands, the faint, nutty scent of millet a promise of fuller meals. Leofwin and Ethelfled work with Hilda's healers, their hands grinding herbs, the sharp, green aroma of yarrow and chamomile filling the air, a balm for the coughs that still rattle through the village. Seinberg and Alric play with the newcomers' children, their laughter a bright chime, the clatter of their stone games echoing like hope. Brant's men, their swords sheathed, help raise new shelters, their hammers ringing out, the sound blending with the creak of wagon wheels and the lowing of oxen. As evening falls, the village gathers around a larger fire, its flames leaping higher, casting warmth that thaws your frozen fingers. The air smells of roasted roots and Hilda's millet porridge, its creamy texture rich on your tongue, a taste of survival shared by all. Songs rise, Ethelfald's lute blending with Hilda's chants, their rhythms weaving a tapestry of voices from east and west, north and south. You sit on a log, its bark rough under your palms, and feel Leofwin's warmth beside you, her hand resting on yours, her breath steady. Seinberg sleeps in your lap, her small form heavy, her dreams undisturbed by the cold for the first time in months. You look to the sky, still veiled in ash, but notice a faint thinning, a sliver of light where the sun might one day break through. The world is not healed, but it endures, its legacy carried in the seeds you plant, the stories you share, the hands you clasp in the dark. You think of today, how the grains in your fields, the spices in your meals, even the melodies in your children's songs, trace back to these moments when strangers became kin and survival became a shared song. Thank you for walking this shadowed path to its end with me. If this story warmed your heart or stirred your soul, like it, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more tales of the past. What legacy would you leave in a world reborn from darkness? For Edric, Leofwin, and their village, the sun may yet return, but their choices have already lit the way.